All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another community conversation. This is Thursday afternoon. We're really excited to host and have a special guest, Jason Mayden, in the house with us. Really excited to get into his design journey and answer some questions from the community Q&A fashion. But before we do that, let me actually share my screen here and walk through a couple of slides to just orient people to what we're doing here with community college. So let's do this. Slideshow mode. All right, perfect. So this is week 3 of a course called Introduction to Social Design. This is a course offered to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign students through the Siebel Center for Design on campus. But what we're doing with this class is also offering an interface, from higher education out to the neighborhood and the community. So opening this course up on Thursdays to a contingent of folks who are community members and interested in topics around social impact and design. So on behalf of myself and Bert, let me welcome you to our week 3 community conversation. Here's a little bit of the agenda. Just want to call out and recognize Happy Lunar New Year to everybody that's celebrating, and welcome to Black History Month as well. This is our first meeting since we moved into the month of February. We'll do a community college overview. We'll introduce our special guests, and then we will do a bit of fireside chat, Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up close to the top of the hour here. So yeah, if you've got questions, again, feel free to put them into the chat all throughout the conversation and use your reactions and different emojis and things to just engage as we move forward in the conversation. So just a quick intro of myself. I'm Brandon Middleton. This is my first time teaching in the design department at the University of Illinois, but I'm an alumni, so really excited to come back to campus and offer some value there. I am a professional. I am an engineer and a business development manager at Amazon Web Services by day. You can see in the middle picture that I'm a dad and a family man as well. And then the third picture is denoting, I don't know, I like to smile and I like to do stuff in the community. So I'm going to hand it over to my co-instructor, Bert, in order to give an intro as well.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I am Bert. I am a lecturer at Siebel Center for Design. The picture on the left, that's me. I also have some background in typeface design as well as making interactive art pieces. So that's where I come from. And that's about all you need to know about me for now. Back to you, Brandon.
All right. I'll have to dig into that piano picture a little bit later on. So we'll, over the course of this 16-week semester, interface with a number of these nonprofits and social impact organizations that you see on the slide here. As designers, we never do it in a silo and we never do it in a vacuum. So with this course being called Intro to Social Design, Bert and I thought it really important to find opportunities to introduce the students in the community to local and national nonprofit organizations that are doing some of the work that we're talking about and that we have a passion for. So tune in to subsequent Thursday community conversations in order to hear from some of these orgs as well. And community, just a quick recap. The first community conversation, which is on YouTube now, had DeVaris Brown and Lynn Canfield in it. We talked about math and computer science and entrepreneurship. And then last week we had Sajud and Tunde talk to us about venture capital and being like the only, sometimes in rooms that are full of mainstream, and how to hold kind of yourself and communicate across lines of difference. And then this week, it's again our distinct honor to have Jason Mayden, one of the best designers in the world, to hang out with us today and do some Q&A and share some of his design journey. So Jay May, if you're queued up in terms of audio, I'd love to pass you the popcorn and just have you say hello to the people, give a couple of minutes, 2, 3, 4 minutes of intro. And again, so delighted to have you be able to join us today. Another Illinois kind of boomerang back into the state. So I'll hand the popcorn over to you, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you, B. But like Brandon said, I'm born and raised in the South Side of Chicago. So U of I, even though I didn't go there, it's still very familiar to me because a lot of family members attended. I think what's important about being able to come and share a journey is really that at the end of the day, the only thing that separates me from where I am and you and where you are is just time. That's it. Delayed gratification and patience has been the superpower that I've been able to display in my career path. I came out and effectively went pro at the age of 19, becoming Nike's first Black design intern. So imagine going from looking at sneakers and Foot Locker, imagining that you would do it, to actually standing next to Michael Jordan before you even can drink. It was a surreal experience. And with that, the one lesson that I learned is that, delayed gratification is a core indicator of future success, because a lot of what I've gone through over the past 20 plus years in the design industry, I'm now starting to see the fruits of my labor. And a lot of it is beyond compensation. A lot of it is relational. A lot of it is, spiritual, in terms of I feel good in my soul. I've been able to empower several generations of creatives, but more importantly, coming back and connecting with with y'all, students who are actually, in a position to one day take my job, which I'm hoping is one of you guys, right? Like, our job is to design ourselves out of our roles. Throughout my career, I've done a myriad of things. I've been an entrepreneur, I've been academic, I've been civil servant, I've been a creative, I've been a business person, I've been a barber, I've been a janitor, I shovel snow, cut grass. I've done every type of job that you can imagine. I don't have pride in any titles. What I do take pride in is the ability to care for my family. So more than any of the titles that I've held, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a believer, and I'm an advocate that focuses on making sure that the voices of the youth are heard and actually amplified within the spaces that I occupy. So that's a little bit about me. Excited, like I said, to be here, especially the first week of Black Future Month, because at the end of the day, we got to start thinking about what we want to build instead of talking about what was taken. We don't have to prove nobody wrong. We just have to prove God right. He chose the right ones this generation for the missions that he's given us. So I'm just excited to share what I've learned humbly and respectfully, and try my best to give you some game that can help you accelerate where you are.
Yeah, I love it, man. I see people throwing in the chat, add talent now on the new link. This man, Jason Mayden, is a man of many talents, and recently had a commercial that LinkedIn shot, which featured him and a number of other creatives and designers. So shout out for being the talent, Jay. That was a good look, man, definitely. What I thought we would do is just kind of take a moment to talk about inspiration. And I prepared one quick image that means a lot to me in terms of kind of Jason and I's relationship. And this is a picture of my son, Christian, when he was, I don't know, maybe 18 months or so. And this is in Los Angeles at the launch of Jason's super heroic entrepreneurship journey. He made apparel for children. And this was probably one of the high points in my year, and something that meant a lot to be able to see kind of a Black and brown designer create something for Black and brown youth that would transcend kind of any of the urban communities that we came from, and just a great time and a great day. So Jay, this is something I'm really excited to hear you maybe reflect on a bit, maybe talk a little bit about super heroic, and then share kind of the inspiration, the pieces that you might have brought before we get into the formal and official Q&A.
Yeah, Super Heroic as a company really is intended to radically challenge the imagery that our children see. I think a lot of times we question what we put in our children's bodies with the food they eat, medicine they take. We're very hypercritical, but we necessarily don't overanalyze and start to dissect some of the media and content representation. Like, we talk about imagery, but a lot of times it's in response to someone else's articulation of our experience as Black people, our experience as people of color. And so what I wanted to do is to rather than trying to fix broken adults, I wanted to empower and build stronger children. So it starts very early with knowledge itself. It starts very early with identifying with your own greatness. It starts very early with loving the skin that you're in, especially, Black and brown skin, because we're taught to not necessarily look at it as an asset, depending upon which community you come from. So I knew that instead of me fighting against the system, I was fighting for our children's mental well-being and for their identity to be liberated. So that was the basis of it. My own son, faced some health challenges, and a lot of it came down to him just looking and feeling different, in a community that wasn't as diverse. And then when I look at the landscape of superheroes and the archetype, it's the most diverse group of people on the planet, even though they don't really exist. I mean, you literally have different species, people who are in wheelchairs, people who can turn invisible. Like it's effectively exactly the definition of intersectionality and representation. So I decided, all right, if I could create in real life Xavier School for for gifted children, for gifted youth, what would it look like? And it would be super heroic. It's educational, it's inspirational, it's narrative driven, it's physically engaging, but more importantly, it's an honest voice. When kids look at the experiences we put on and look at the comic book we had, it was all basically, something that they could relate to from an imagination standpoint, because it spoke to them much deeper than what you see in cartoons and the kids' landscape, where it speaks at them, but not with them. So that was a lot of what founded the company, man. And then let me see if I can share the screen. Pull this up. There we go. All right, so I'll show you guys a little bit. Let me know if you can see this as I go. Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, we can see.
All right, so on social, I'll talk a lot about Dr. Lucius Fox. I think the most important thing about that narrative is that was the first time I saw a Black man that wasn't some form of a mutant or some super extraordinarily physically gifted being. He was just smart. And I was like, you know what? I might never be like Mike, but I can be like Lucius. I can build things, I can create things. And that puts me in the room with my heroes. And so I obsessed over trying to figure out, how do I become like Dr. Lucius Fox? Obviously that led me to work with this man, MJ. As I mentioned, I was Nike's first, Black industrial design intern. I was Jordan Brand's first design intern. So I got a chance to see the brand from, when it went from one shoe to effectively a line of shoes and athletes and initiatives, and to be from the shy and to be able to see Mike off the court and be able to see how he operated as a businessman was even more impressive to see how he operated as an athlete. He was sharp, inquisitive, highly engaged, very respectful, was on his square, like in Chicago, we say, you're on your square. Mike was on his square all times. He knew his numbers. He knew exactly where the business was headed, and he knew how he wanted it to get there. And he empowered us to be in a driver's seat. We didn't take direction from Mike. We set direction with Mike, and then we were allowed to execute. So he treated us like we were in the triangle offense. Everybody knew their role. Everybody could move without the ball in their hands. So nobody felt any type of way about their ego, because he made sure we all had a position to play. I had a good fortune. My first shoe after my internship, I did a shoe, the Air Jordan 17 Mule. I went to production, came back. That first shoe that I designed, in addition to Michael Vick's branding and a bunch of stuff for NFL, was the Monarch. It's still funny because that was like a project that I took serious that I didn't expect to actually work out, but now it became what it became. Helped to kick off what we now know as entertainment collaboration. So way back in the early 2000s, I was doing stuff for Eminem, did stuff for Ninth Wonder, did stuff for Lil Wayne, Drake. When Chris Paul did the Drake kind of dropping his first mixtape, Drake at that point had some photos out there wearing fake Jordans, which was hilarious. So we took care of that quickly and got him blessed and brought in, and all these years later, he's doing what he's doing. So a lot of it was just me taking risk, based on that idea of being like Lucius. I've turned Chris Paul into a Gundam. If you follow anime, mecha culture out of Tokyo, this is something I loved my entire life. Definitely wasn't something kids on the South Side were really into at that time. Imagine me being little, sick, wavy hair, like in Japanese art and design. I had to fight every day. So I had to get nice with my hands, drawing and fighting, because it was an uphill battle trying to just not be called, weird or a nerd. And so when I look at culture now, that basically all the things I got made fun of for liking are actually what culture is celebrating, I feel grateful because I endured and I didn't let people who didn't understand my interests deter me away from those interests. Because there are a lot of little Black kids and Black girls and Latinos and Asians and people who feel different who love this stuff. and they can see themselves in this stuff. And it doesn't make them different. It just makes them have different interests. This was important to me because I'm neurodivergent. I have some things with the way my brain works, and I'm grateful for that as well because I can relate. I have empathy to other people who go through stuff. Worked on a field band. I'm a polymath, so I dabble in technology, traditional design, UX, UI, art, everything. Whatever piques my interest. I was head of innovation, so I got the chance to look at the future of wearables. So was initially at the core and the beginning of what we now look at as a movement called quantify self. So being able to measure your body, improve and learn. So all these little tracker apps. I was in the room when we created what this industry is now, set as the norm. Fell in love with data as a medium, so used it to understand that there are 13 styles of play. There are 10 that actually changed, the trajectory of the game. Mike mastered all the styles that were relevant, so he's like a mixed martial artist physiologically. This data allowed me to create this composite of what Michael Jordan would evolve into over time had he kept evolving if he was normalized at the age of 23. So a lot of fun stuff blended from comic books. Did my own comic book with super heroic, something called Phase 5, showing different hair textures, putting a Black woman in a position of authority as the head engineer who was effectively creating all the gadgets for the superhero. So showing that, all these paradigms are being challenged, all these archetypes are being reestablished. Our villains were like, mean lunch ladies. They weren't mutants. They were people in the community who forgot why they actually had to serve. So it was social commentary, teaching our kids to have discernment of, who to trust and how to trust adults and what to expect of adults. So a lot of it was psychology based, and it was a wonderful experience. Shoes, the cape, comic book, the whole thing helped to transform kids from the regular self to exemplar self. And there's a study called the Batman effect, where if a kid is put in a cape and they're given an average task, they'll complete it with higher levels of efficiency and care, which effectively proves that if you label someone a hero, they become one. If you label someone a criminal, they become one. So that's why I'm a big fan of understanding the power of the words you speak over children. In most communities of color, we tell our kids to stay in a child's place. What you've done is you've rejected their ability to have a voice, and you've put them in a position of passivity where they don't know if they actually have the agency to take action in their own lives. So this brand was intended to break some of the generational trauma that happens with language in communities of color and give kids an affirmation that they are the hero of their narrative, they're the protagonist. So a lot of it was based on positive psychology and just overall childhood development and how we can build this curriculum to combat what's happening in schools and the media. Partnerships with Nerf, because Nerf was dope when I was a kid, and I just wanted to bring it back to Nerf having skateboards and other things besides guns. Well, I come from guns on a toy, so I don't like the fact that Nerf reinforces a behavior that I've seen actually play out in real life, and the outcome is not a pizza party and sleepover. Is slow slinging and flower bringing where I come from. So I tried to push people away from the gun culture, but more of the play culture in Nerf. Some of our advertisements, we focus heavily on Afrofuturism. It's my daughter in the front. And, I wanted to show different shades of kids of color, different body types, but more importantly, more girls than boys, because the research at that point showed that girls in elementary school are physiologically, emotionally, and cognitively more advanced. And it's society that tricks young girls into believing that they have no power. So you see it at around 6th grade. A lot of young women start to lower their hands because they don't want to speak up in class. So what I wanted to do is capture a girl in elementary school, empower her, let her see herself as the hero of her own narrative instead of a damsel in distress being, sitting there waiting for someone to save them. Because at this point in time, we need all types of heroes. We need to kind of break down what that means to be a leader. So I wanted to show young women as leaders. Partnership with NASA, same thing. Wanted to show this image of a future forward narrative, specifically for darker skinned children. A lot of us don't even think about the future. We're stuck in the present because of our circumstances. So normally when you see darker skinned children, especially Black boys, it's never anything positive. So we wanted to show something aspirational and kind of like affirming. And we wanted to show girls of all shades, kids of all backgrounds. So the beautiful thing about designing an inclusive brand is that I have the ability to celebrate any type of kid at any moment with the comic book, with the photo. So it didn't matter where you came from. The only thing that mattered is that you have inspiration, you have aspiration. And so that is the stuff that I've worked on in a nutshell. And that's a little bit about how my brain works. And I thought that might be helpful as I started to spout out these random responses to Brandon's questions. And you all see some of my work and some of the things I've been able to be fortunate enough to touch.
So yeah, feel free with the let's test out our reactions. Throw your favorite reaction in there, and I'd love for people to maybe in the chat throw the superhero that you identify with. I heard you shout out some X-Men references and some Batman, but Jay, for me, I'm gonna have to go with Iron Man on this fine day. But throw into the chat the superhero that you are currently rocking and identifying with. I see some Spider-Man in there. And I'll transition and share back my screen here too. I appreciate kind of the way that you laid all of that out, and we'll go back one slide to kind of focus the narrative now on maybe if you take us as a new designer, like we could start at the college years or we could start even earlier than that. Everybody in the audience today who's taking this course for credit is like on an on-ramp kind of introduction to design. So talk to us a little bit about like how you first got interested in kind of doing this work that you're now kind of the, subject matter expert, world-class designer presently, but how did it all start?
Yeah, man, I didn't even know what design was until my senior year of high school, but it started at 7 years old when I was in the hospital. And like I said, I discovered Lucius Fox and the Batman comic. I actually found it on eBay and bought it again. Just came yesterday, so I'm so hyped. Not opening it, of course, but this was the actual comic that I read when I was, 7 years old, sick, and I saw Lucius in there, and I just decided, like, man, if he can make gadgets for Batman, like I can make gadgets for people too. It was something about the fact that he had access to all these people, and he was responsible for why they were superheroes. It was just cool to me. But I thought it was engineering. My whole life, I was told, hey, if you want to build something, you have to be an engineer. Mm-hmm. And so what I would do is I would always sketch my ideas and I would just share them openly with anybody that would listen. I would talk to teachers, talk to classmates, and just always try to figure out how to make gadgets. I was a big fan of kids' adventure books and adventure movies, the Goonies and Encyclopedia Brown. And like, I love like mysteries and solving problems. So I started to model that. And over time, people kind of knew me as the Nike kid. Like, oh, that's the kid that want to work at Nike. That's the kid that want to draw shoes. At first, it wasn't a positive thing because people were saying it to make fun of me. Like, that's not going to happen. Ain't nobody from the South Side doing that. You definitely ain't doing that. But the more they said it, I'm like, nah, I believe it. I'm going to just believe it myself. So I started to talk to myself out loud. And I started to tell myself, like, positive affirmations when I was about 12 years old. Because everybody would just laugh at me. So I'm like, you know what? I can't pay attention to what they're saying because they're laughing because they don't understand. And I don't have to do nothing but keep being me. So it wasn't until my freshman year, after I had a very tragic experience with a friend, that I finally decided that art was really going to be my career path, not my hobby. And my teacher, Mr. Summers, my art teacher, allowed me to stay after school and airbrush. And, the way he spoke to me was with so much trust and so much respect that, I started to model the characters, character traits that he saw in me as a kid. I didn't know. I thought I had the potential to be a criminal. Like, I didn't realize I had the potential to create the world I lived in until this teacher told me that, this art teacher. And so, pursued that for a while, figuring out, hey, I want to be an engineer. I would go to Foot Locker, sit there and sketch shoes. And a lot of us believe you have to get these flashy internships. I just started where I was. I knew I wanted to be in the footwear industry. The closest thing to the footwear industry was Foot Locker. And by hanging out in the environment, I met sales reps. I met local merchants. I met merchandising people. And it broke down to me different parts of the business that I should be aware of. And then senior year, it was a blessing because my coaches had found an article about a kid at designing cars that had an internship at Nike and called Toyota, was where the kid worked, asked him what school they recruited him from. And they told me about CCS in Detroit and then Art Center in California, and the rest was history. So if I was to say, how did I find out about design? It wasn't really finding out about design. It was enduring, people questioning my desire to create until the answer for why I had this desire was revealed. So when you have something insatiable that compels you to keep going, even when it's ambiguous, that's your purpose. Purposes are never clear. They're not meant to be. Because if they were clear, you would understand the weight of that purpose. And most people aren't willing to step up and bear the weight of what they're being asked to do. They want the attributes and the accoutrements of success, but they don't want to pay the price to be successful. Everything costs, pay to play. But in the act of pursuing and becoming, I felt blessed, man, that design found me. I had the word given to me. Someone said, you need to be an industrial designer. And that was the first time I heard that phrase. And I was like, that's exactly who I am. And that's it, man. But it all started with Lucius Fox and that representation in that comic book.
Yeah, thanks for painting a picture of kind of like the early days and how it got kicked off. In terms of like actually doing it and getting your reps in, what did it look like in terms of on ramping and being able to actually call yourself and think of yourself as a designer? Was it, give us a little bit about how you formed your process?
So it's it's different. I believe we all had a capacity to be a designer in our own right, depending on the market sector, depending on our approach, because all design is someone that's willing to ask better questions. Designers don't provide answers. We ask better questions. And when you ask the right question, the solution reveals itself. So the thing that I started to do is I researched the history of what it was I said I wanted to be a part of. If you claim you're a designer and I ask you questions about the history of design, you can't answer it. I call it cap, like you capping. And there's a lot of people out here taking these little 3, 4, 5-day courses and come out and try to stand next to a person who's been trained for 20 years and hold a dialogue, and they're not equally yoked. I don't want to see anybody get out there and get embarrassed because they slept at a Holiday Inn and then woke up the next day, thought they could be a brain surgeon. That don't work that way. Design is a lifelong job. You don't graduate with a degree in design and then you're a designer, because what we're doing every single day is becoming subject experts of the problems that are current and relevant. So that means you're always in a capacity or modality of learning. You're always evolving as a designer. It's like golf. The older you get, the better you should become. So the first thing I did was study the people that came before me. So I would go to art museums. I would understand everything from classical periods of art, why they emerged. Like when we look at modernism and we think it's the coolest thing ever now, but people don't realize that modernism was basically laughed at when it first happened, because you had the surrealism movement. You had these people who wanted everything to look picture perfect. And the people who are modernists will push these little small galleries in France and weren't allowed to show their work and were laughed at and called basically the equivalent of what we would call the graffiti artist today. They were like, oh, that's terrible. This is horrible work. I can't believe this. Now, everybody is talking about this clean modern aesthetic. It's so common now. So learning like, wow, they were rejects. And then that's equivalent to hip hop culture, which in 100 years will be viewed like modernism, because hip hop was a bunch of rejects, graffiti, breaking, MCing. First piece. Then I understood after history, I had to respect culture. Each culture creates differently. Each culture creates for different reasons. So I studied everything from Southeast Asian art to Northern Asian art to South American art to indigenous art to European art, North African art, because I understood that was a reflection of how they saw themselves in antiquity. So when you can respect the culture, you don't come in with a creative colonizing mindset where you think how you think is appropriate for their context. That's a big issue with design thinking, is because you show up assuming that the way you think is right in someone else's context. It's arrogance and hubris, and it's quite honestly ridiculous. You have to be empathic and you have to be willing to accept that while that problem is there for them, it may not be there for you. But if they say it's real, it's real. If I go somewhere and someone tells me that XYZ flower is a deadly problem for them, and for me, I buy these flowers all the time because I love them, I have to throw my biases out the window. So understanding culture allows you to do that. Then the third piece, which I think people get a little bit intimidated by, is the sketching. Design isn't sketching. Sketching is sketching. Design isn't drawing. Drawing is drawing. Design is a full end-to-end process. It is not one discrete activity that shows you a visual outcome. So I want to dispel that myth that if you can't draw, you can't design. No, drawing is drawing. It is a part of design. And if you can't draw, you can be a design strategist and hire somebody to draw. There are multiple jobs in design that allow you to still be part of the creative process. And drawing is just one of them. But for me, I wanted to be on the drawing side. I wanted to visualize. So repetition. Drawing is muscle memory. When you learn how to sketch correctly, you sketch from your shoulder, not your wrist. We're taught in school to sketch from your wrist. Designers are taught to sketch from your shoulder for better line quality. So I was a martial artist. I was a football player, athlete through shot put. So I understood biomechanics and body movement. So I repetitiously sketched, like as if I was putting up jump shots, 1,000 sketches a day. Mike said he shot 1,000 for free throws. I sketched 1,000 sketches. They weren't beautiful. There was no preciousness in terms of line quality. I just wanted value. I wanted to repeat the same behavior so that I was training myself to produce. And that was my formula, man, for 2 summers. And I was like, I didn't come from a wealthy family. I didn't have all this private art. I didn't, get put in AXO and none of that stuff. I was smart and talented and gifted, but I didn't have the support system. So I had to recreate it and catch up with my peers. Because the number one thing I tell people is you can be talented. If you don't have no work ethic, it is what it is. So I just put the work ethic to use, and that's it. Studied the craft, man. Sorry for the long-winded answer. I'm just trying to give you guys the play-by-play of a person who was self-taught. Even though I was going to a design school, they did not want to teach me what they were teaching the other students, because then I would be competitive, and it backfired. But the school is amazing. But I understood at that time, people who wanted to do shoes were laughed at because everyone wanted to do cars in Detroit. That was the thing. So I was left to figure out independent studies. And now I can give you guys the game on how to do it for yourself instead of somebody else doing it for you.
Man, you dropped so many bars in there. I'm going to ask people to feel free to put their own questions into the Q&A as I keep going through some of the ones that I received here. But kind of your points about self-determination, we touched on that in previous weeks. Self-value, not letting kind of the outside determine how you think about yourself, and like self-talk, how that's important. And kind of the end-to-end process, and the fact that what you do isn't just one thing. Like if you want to call yourself a designer, especially as it pertains to social impact and some of these community issues that we're looking at in this course, then you've got to think through multiple, sets of stakeholder groups, be comfortable kind of switching in and out of context. So all great points. I want to move over to a question that we received from our student, Allison. I'm going to read it off, Jay, for you. And it's more related to kind of what you're currently doing kind of in fashion as a president of a Fear of God Athletics. She asked, I've got an interest in fashion. How can someone go about entering into that industry? So going from, Jason at Nike to kind of what you're doing today, was that a good on-ramp, or are you learning like brand new things that you never knew about fashion and apparel in terms of like getting started there?
Nah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's new learning, to be honest, because when you're a product designer and you realize that everything is made and manufactured, it's just really the same processes for different reasons. Fashion is fantasy. Sport is actuality, right? Like there is a finish line in sport. There's no finish line in fashion. They have similar vernacular seasons, right? That means that it's episodic. It's not continual. It's not, everything is temporal. They have different expressions where you have All-Star Weekend, you have Fashion Week showing the best and the brightest. So the corollaries and analogies are 100% parallel, because athletes want to be designers, designers want to be rappers, rappers want to be designers and athletes. It's all kind of these extreme versions of how we want to be seen, how we want to be valued within our community. Because when you don't have anything, the one thing that everybody knows is that you want to project the image of prosperity. And our images of prosperity sometimes lie in the archetype of a hero or the archetype of a muse. And that's really all the differences are. One is an archetype of a hero, the other is a muse. It's aspirational, and it gives you a direction of the best expression of how we view the definition of beauty. The other one, an athlete, shows you the best expression of how we view human potential. So there's beauty and there's potential, and that's really it. Breaking into fashion, there's no such thing as breaking in. I think that's the first part that we have to remove from our language, because it assumes we're on the outside and we have to physically force our way into places that we naturally occupy. You are fashion. Fashion is you. Fashion is authenticity. It's your story. It's your version. It's your opinion. So you don't need to break in anywhere to have an opinion. You just have to show people and convince them that your opinion is valid, right? That's the beautiful part about fashion. Same thing with being an MC and a musician. Everybody's like, oh, you got to put me on. I don't have to put you on. You got to put yourself on. You got to put your work out. You got to tell people stories. All of us had to put something out there and take the risk of having no one care consistently for long periods of time. When I started, I put myself out there, got rejected from Nike 3 times in a row. No one cared. They lost my portfolio. They were like, this is great. But what I did is each time I was building confidence. I was building resilience. I was building, even more of a desire to get to where I wanted to be. And it's the same thing with any creative endeavor, whether it's breaking into the fashion industry, as you put it, or breaking into music. It's about first having your opinion out there. So you have evidence to point back to and say, look at my opinion, and here's why it's valid. And then over time, people will help you when they see you are in motion. And that's where you start to get exponential growth. A lot of young fashion designers that are popping right now, they're self-taught. They just got money that they stocked up from being club promoters or selling shoes. And then they start experimenting in downtown LA, making things that they liked, setting up their own photo shoots with their iPhone, getting their friends to wear it. And they built a community around shared interests. Fashion is shared interest. It's fantasy and shared interest. You look at what Nigo just did, by coming on board and doing his first show, in Paris for, one of the only, if only, fashion houses that was founded by an Asian person, Kenzo. So Nigo comes in, known for streetwear. Now he's bringing this element to Kenzo. You got Pusha T playing his song for the first time at the fashion show. You got Tyler art directed at Louis Vuitton. And then you have an Italian composer doing the music. You see the juxtaposition of culture, and none of that required them to break into anything. These are people who, one raps about selling cocaine, the other one is Golf Wang, and you don't know what he's rapping about half the time, but they're authentic. So what I would tell you is the power is in your hands. They need you. Let them break into what you're doing. Let them find you. And it just takes you being able to put yourself out there. I do believe in internships. I do believe in apprenticeships. I do believe in getting entry-level jobs to learn these systems. But ultimately, what you're doing is just gearing up and learning how to apply it for something that you naturally have inside you. Because I believe all of us are capable of being builders and not just consumers. And so I encourage you to, go to the fashion weeks when you can, go to the material shows. There are a lot of people don't realize all the designers go to material shows. So Linea Pelli, which is a leather show in Europe. If you want to go and be in European fashion, go to the material shows in Europe. You're going to see product marketers and designers right there, and you can run up on them with your portfolio. You'll see vendors that you can negotiate with, get some samples, and test out your ideas with free materials. That's one of the unlocks, because we go there for inspiration. And I used to go as a student for networking, and it worked out because I met a lot of professional people at these material shows that my colleagues will laugh at, like, why are you going to look at leather and cotton? I'm like, because that's what makes shoes. So I need to be in a room. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, beautiful. I just saw one come in from Arvin that talks about inspiration. Like, have you ever entered into a slump, and like, what do you do kind of in those valley or those down periods in order to get yourself back on the good foot?
Oh man, all the time, bro. I think if you don't enter a slump, you're not pushing yourself. You're not using your gift enough. If you push an engine to its max, it overheats, right? So same thing with your creative output. You should have moments where you're like, okay, I'm exhausted, let me replenish. However, for me, I don't replenish by resting. I replenish through service, because when I have no skin in the game and I'm just helping my friends on their projects and I'm free to just be creative and brainstorm without any expectation of output, that recharges me. That gives me so much joy when I'm like, wow, man, this is not my problem I'm trying to solve. It's not my product. I'm not responsible for anything other than just giving some creative ideas. So I put myself back into, an amateur mode. Because when you with your homies and your friends and you're in your room dreaming and y'all talking, man, when we do this, it's gonna be crazy. I try as much as I can to serve my friends who are going through a slump and trying to solve problems, because that puts us right back in that room as teenagers, dreaming up the future with no restraint, no regard for the rules, no regard for how much it costs, just pure creativity. And then I take that energy right back into the stuff that I touch next. So that's why, a lot of times people will be like, how do you juggle your calendar? It's not juggling. It's understanding my patterns so I can slot in at the right time something that proactively prevents me from being mentally, physically, and cognitively fatigued. Like, I plan for burnout. Everybody is gonna have to stop working because we get tricked into overworking here. So you might as well plan for moments of replenishment, because rest is a form of reparations, like for real. So I get all my reparations. They ain't gotta give me no bag. I take a break because I ain't gotta prove nothing to nobody, because I'm not gonna burn myself out. And I need to make sure that I'm replenishing through service. So that's been my greatest unlock. It's effective 100% of the time. And most time I'm serving stuff that's impacting children. So I'm obviously gonna have, a good time helping kids with their schoolwork, or it's like Street Code is where I serve. It's a nonprofit that both Brandon and I work with, that was founded by one of the other members of Trilicon. And so I pour my time into that. When I'm feeling down, I get on the Zoom with these 12-year-olds, man, that's building companies. And I feel like I'm 20 feet tall. And I feel so good knowing that we can pour into them, and then I take that energy right back into my work. So yeah, service is my trip.
That's beautiful. And I think a bar in there is the sequencing, like in your day, like you've got work, and then you can easily put some stuff in there that is a recharge, maybe in the middle of the day. So, create those sandwiches so that when you go and look at an 8-hour block, you've been able to do a couple of hours of that recharge that Jay talked about. That's a great piece of advice for going into the working world after graduation. So I saw Jan, one of our friends, come in the chat with the question. Jan, you want to come off mute and ask it?
Yep. Hey, Jay. Hey, Brandon.
What up?
So when you're a polymath and a multi-hyphenate, and you become like the friend that has all the skills, can be good at design, be good at business, get everything done. A lot of times you get into projects with your friends that turn into business ventures. How do you keep it fair? Because I know with your crew, you all been rocking for a long time, and you look at like Jay and Rihanna and Jay Brown, how they've all been able to keep themselves together and build wealth together, right? Like, well, how do you keep from things going awry where you're working with your friends, business gets involved, and money and business sometimes, and friends don't mix sometimes?
Yeah, I think for us, like Trilicon, none of us have the same skill set. So that's the first piece. Like, all of us complement each other. So there's really no direct overlap. So it is kind of like, hey man, I know I can go to B for the things I need around tech. I can go to them around anything in terms of community. Like, I just know the people that I can lean on when I have questions. So that's the first piece. We don't have a non-competitive structure. Now, in my other endeavors, it is competitive, right? I'm working with friends who do have the same skill set and are building things that have importance. And in that regard, it's just about clear communication and accountability and neutral thinking. Because the reason why friendships mess with money is because everybody assumes that a person is trying something and that the behaviors are personal. It's a personal transgression. Like, oh, you know better. You don't. You'd be surprised how many people don't have emotional intelligence that you hang out with, but you cool with them, but you've never had to like be in a relationship with them in that way. So you don't know what their gaps are in self-development until you work with them. Because the people you hang out with, you don't know how they are in a professional setting until you do. And it's like, damn, man, I didn't realize you were so sloppy with communication, fam. Dang, I didn't realize you always late, dog. Dang, I didn't realize you don't check your work before you email it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like little stuff. So what I do is I try to set the precedent. I give grace, but I remain exceptionally neutral. And then when it is conversations, over time, you will end up having some type of tension, because that's called accountability. And if your friend is really your friend, they want to see you succeed, and they're going to hold you accountable. Even if that conversation is uncomfortable, they're going to pull you to the side and rap to you. Now it's up to you to determine if you're doing the talking or someone's talking to you, if you do have a negative response, the introspection is key. Like, dang, why did I respond that way? I know that person's heart. I know they care about me. Why did I feel like that person was coming at me? Because it really is. That's really what it is. It's a matter of the heart. And so in those situations, patience is key. Not taking anything personal, because what it is your presence makes them be accountable. And it's easier when people believe in the myth of who you are versus the reality, because your real friend is going to call you on your BS. The people who are your followers or worshipers in an organization who look up and revere someone, they're going to be like, oh, anything this person says is the truth. Your friend like, man, you lying. That, so so it's the accountability piece. So I would just say patience, remain emotionally neutral, realize that 99.9% of the things that do go wrong have nothing to do with you. And if talking about money and all that stuff is difficult with your friends, that's because you have two different mindsets. One is an abundance mindset, one is a scarcity mindset. Scarcity mindsets give people this idea that I have to protect my fiefdom. I have to protect my part of the business. Instead of a we mentality, it's a me mentality. Like, well, this is all me over here and we can combine. That's not how it works. You have to trust that you're giving something up to receive something. So there's a little bit of reciprocity of intent that needs to be established at the beginning. What's your intention? Because it's cool to work with your friends, but if the intentions and the incentives don't match, you're naturally gonna have friction. I learned the hard way in a previous company. My work ethic is my work ethic. I assume that someone who said that they can get down could get down. And when they couldn't get after it, and I brought it up to them, they're like, well, I'm not you. And they had their little moment. I'm like, bro, you could have just told me what you could have done instead of trying to keep pace. We're two different people, you know? So you got to have those established conversations up front. You got to design how you want to disagree. You need to all have a clear, you know, set of values and also a clear vision of what success is and what an exit looks like in your business. Are you selling it? Are you going public? You can invest, like, what is it? Because if you got different definitions of how that thing ends, that's also friction. So start from the point of success, where you want to be in 5 years, work backwards, and do what's called pre-mortems. Pre-mortems are risk analysis. And it's like, what could all go wrong? If we fail, what happened? And a big part of that with friends is addressing up front. We fail because we don't communicate well. We don't like, and when you do it in a pre-mortem sense, it's objective. It's not individual, it's circumstantial. So you can remove emotion and just observe and talk and predict and analyze. They're gonna be bothered by the process because they don't think it should be more fluid because you friends. I don't want to Zoom. I don't want to get, oh, well, no business that's ever been successful didn't work without a process. Friendship sometimes wants to skip over the step of formality. Formalize your friendship by saying, I respect you enough to put this in an email, to put this on your calendar, to have a plan. So that's from my humble experience, how I would look at it.
This is like expanding past design and into just like good life lessons and things to take into consideration. So Pastor Jason, thank you, man, for putting some of this. We got a question in from Carolina, who mentioned, you know, the delayed gratification point that you started the talk with. Is there any daily practice or activity that keeps you kind of cultivating those skills?
Oh man, I'm so glad you asked this. This is my #1 lesson I teach my kids. Put the shopping cart back. That's it. That's the trick to understanding delayed gratification. And the reason I say that is you go to a grocery store, you're in a parking lot anywhere. The simplest form of self-discipline is taking your cart and putting it back where you got it from. Vast majority of people do not do that because they think someone else will get it. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So the fact that I take my time, put the cart back, makes me know that at the end of the day, I'm moving at the speed of grace and not the speed of greed. If I move at the speed of grace and I think about the person after me, I'm never going to be so far ahead of my ability that I start to trip myself up and burn myself out. So I'm always thinking, if I'm going to be here right now, I have to make sure it's reset so it's easier for the next person after me. And it slows you down because you're considering your impact. You're considering what you're doing. That's the trick to delayed gratification, is considering more than your needs. That's it. And when you're doing that, you're not stopping your blessings. You're making sure you're mature enough to handle your blessings. Because a lot of people get stuff too early and they squander it. You'll get what you want early if you ask for it. I believe in speaking life. I believe in saying what you want and the universe conspiring to give you it. The question is, are you ready to have it? So delayed gratification can be practiced daily by waking up, spreading your bed, waking up, putting the shopping cart back. Just these little small acts of discipline that may delay you by 3 or 4 minutes in the morning, but compound that behavior over time, and you'll wait to send that email. You'll take an extra day to finish that detail. You'll take some more time to pick the restaurant that you really want to go to instead of settling for the one that's open. That's what it is. We've been taught to settle for convenience. I don't settle for convenience. I don't. I wait for conviction. If I'm not convicted about something, I'm waiting. I'm not settling. Why settle? I get one life. I don't want none of this to be on accident. Not an ounce. Be very intentional with what you do with your time. And that's where you get your greatest return.
Man, Carolina, thanks for that prompt and that question. And Jay, man, that's a beautiful response. You might have just came for me in that I might or might not have made my bed this morning. I want to invite David. I saw you put something in the chat. You want to ask this question and come off mute?
All right. So my question was, like, when designing, like, as an employee, do you treat like every project as your own like personal work, or do you like design to like innovate, like solve a problem or increase sales for a company you're working for? And like how much, sorry, and like how much of your own personal like style do you incorporate like in your designs?
It's a great question. So style has multiple definitions, you know. There's your style of research, there's your style of documentation, and then there's your aesthetic, which is the visual style. Every project I work on, I don't take it as my personal work because then my biases inherently take over and I can't inject my thoughts into someone else's problems. I have to be an observer and a respondent with no actual, you know, opinion on whether it's right or wrong. That's my start my process by breaking down what I assume I know about it and disproving myself. The next thing I do when you say personal, I do become personally involved because I understand anyone that spends money on my products is expecting for it to perform at a certain level or have a certain value. As you grow as a creative, as a designer, you become less emotionally attached to your work because every day you put yourself out there, somebody's gonna hate it. And if I emotionally attach myself to everything I did, I would be a miserable person because for every one person that likes it, there are 10 people who hate it and they don't even know why, they just don't like it. So I try to personally be deeply connected to the group of people or the person I'm trying to serve or the problem I'm trying to serve. I call it being married to the problem, not the solution. A lot of designers get married to the solution and it's like, I like this thing, I love this thing, this is the way, and it might not be the way. And so that keeps me honest, realizing that I am a visitor in this person's everyday life and I have to be respectful because I'm not a permanent resident in their world. I'm just a visitor who's there to help make their world more efficient. And when you're visiting a country and you're learning about a culture, you're respectful, right? You're trying to be present. You're going to try your best to say thank you in that language. At least learn that. At least learn thank you and please, like the basic, forms of showing respect. It's the same thing with the design. At least learn the basic rules of engagement for the community you're serving. At least learn behavioral norms. At least learn the depth of the problem, not only just for them physically, but societally, because all problems have a connection back to infrastructure, whether it's governmental infrastructure, financial, health, education. Every problem we're facing in North America and globally is not a matter of resources. It's a matter of resource constrained. Our resources are trapped in systems that are incentivized to charge us for things that God gave us for free. So inherently, these problems are much deeper than the individual widget. So that's where you got to zoom out and look at context all the time. Because without proper context, you're doing exactly what's done to cultures of color. You're assuming and you're stereotyping, right? And so we have to realize our privileges. If you've been born and raised in North America, you speak English as a first language, that's a huge privilege globally. I can tell you that it's a huge privilege. And we're constantly reminded of our disadvantages. So as a designer, when you know your privileges, you can challenge your privileges because that comes with biases as well. You challenge your biases and then you bad at that point, like you off to the races. You can get after it. I can design for people in wheelchairs. I've never been in one. I can design for elderly people. I'm not an elderly person because it's extreme empathy. And I don't assume I know anything about that topic. I listen to them. I know them to serve them. And I ask the questions that are needed, because a lot of times questions aren't asked because people are afraid of offending. It's like if you come with the right intention and you're open from the beginning that you know zero and you're trying to learn, you can go far by just asking the right question. So that's what I would say when I'm doing different projects is I can't inject my aesthetic unless I'm designing for myself. I'm serving an audience that I'm working for. So I gotta do what's relevant for them. I would never wear the Monarchs, but that thing for the dad that's out there cutting grass and eating Dunkin' Donuts, that's he's living his best life in those Monarchs. That's not my vibe, but that's what that person's vibe was. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, we have a little running joke every time we see people in Monarchs in our everyday life. We got to text them to Jason like, here's your work out there in the wild, man. Another 67-year-old dude that I see in Target. Got a pair of shoes. David, I see you with the follow-up question. Yeah, go ahead.
My bad. But like, how are you like evaluated? Like, if you're like, I guess, working for a problem or trying to solve a problem, how is like, I guess, your design process or the product like evaluated?
Oh yeah, so you're just talking about the key performance indicators, knowing if you've done something that's successful. That's where having a deep relationship with your audience comes into play, because you shouldn't be surprised by any problems if you're talking with your customer constantly. So that's where the feedback loop happens. Design doesn't stop when you ship your product or your app or any of that. It doesn't stop. That actually is the beginning of the conversation, because now you have your first best idea out there. It's your first best idea. Now, when the audience is using it through qualitative research, so in-person, interviews, shop-alongs, ethnography is a research, method where you actually sit inside the life of the person that you're designing for and with, and you can see how they use the projects and use the products. So you're gonna tell quickly through one, your sell-through data. So that's the first easy metric. Did you sell a lot of them, and what's the return rate? If you sold 1,000 and only 10 got returned, and those are for defects or whatever, you got a hit product. If you sell 1,000 and 950 return, yeah, you out there, you bugging. You need to go back to the drawing board. It's not the solution. So that's the first indicator, is adoption. Second indicator is organic growth. Are people naturally referring your solution to other people who have that same problem? You can see that online. A lot of products that have taken off, or services that have taken off, like Stitch Fix, for example, the clothing company that sends these boxes. They had a styling survey. The styling survey was relatively accurate. And then people on Facebook started to share with other people, like, yo, you should do this. This is pretty cool. And then it organically took off because it was the service that truly solved the problem. That's why I said you have to obsess over asking the right questions, because when you find the right problem to solve, then it scales because the solution becomes ubiquitous. And you don't have to think about convincing people to buy it. The product sells itself. So the measures of success, honestly, are on adoption and on organic growth, meaning how many people talk about it without you having to pay them to talk about it. Because social, you can measure it real easy. It was harder when I started because you had a few magazines, you had a few blogs, but we needed to make sure for certain what we put out would work, because we wouldn't get the feedback at least for 120 days. Right now, you get it in 120 seconds. So you got more to use. So that's what I would say I would look at in the digital age for a product success.
Yeah, to double click on that one, we just got a question from Armando that talks about kind of the best design tools that the learners of design today could be using. And like, you started in design a longer time ago and things were a little bit more analog. What kind of progress have you seen in terms of the field adopting the technology? And then kind of what's the best starter kit or the best kind of early advice you could give to folks that are starting to evaluate maybe the technology that designers use today?
So when I started, we had, Alias and Maya, and we had all the 3D modeling stuff, but we still had to have the ability to listen and to sketch. I would say the number one skill set this design generation needs to have is to learn how to listen. Everybody got answers, but ain't nobody listening to what the real problems are. If I go online one more time to see a beautiful rendering, but it can't actually fit on the human body, I'm tired of it. It's like, really, like, this looks cool, but it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't work. What we're literally doing is creating superfluous objects, things that have no reason to exist. And the reason why we've gotten into that is because the tools are so easy. You can create anything and there's no quality control. And now you have an echo chamber. I see portfolios and they all look the same. They all look like high polished 3D models. And it's like, where's the sketchiness? Where's the mess? How did you discover that that's the right thing to put in front of me? And no one knows. No one can tell. Oh, I thought it looked good. I mean, it looked hot. It's dope. You can't repeat that. You can't just, our strategy this season is hot. It's dope. Like, man, miss me with that BS. You need to have a process. You need to be straight up with, yo, I was in this place. There was this problem. I pulled out my pad. I got some napkins. I'm more interested in how you discover, not in what you discover. It's the how. And great designers will tell you this. Design leadership isn't taught. They don't teach any of us how to manage people. You're judged on your individual contributions and then you're promoted. You make a hit selling product, they promote you to run all the design. And so when you're joining a corporation, you have to understand most design leaders aren't great people leaders. They're always going to obsess over the work. What's the work? And they don't care about the finished result. They care about the process, because that's what they're paying you for, is to bring your process to this company and add some magic to what their process is to produce new outcomes. Right. And so that's what I would obsess over. If you want to look at skill sets, is your documentation, your communication, your conflict resolution, your negotiation skills, your interview skills, all of that is going to matter more to me than your 3D modeling, because I could pay some kid right now in Korea 15, $100, and I can have a whole 3D model bonanza, and it's a 12-year-old kid that you could just find that can just kill it. So that doesn't really get you ahead anymore, because the tools can be used by anybody. Like, we've done that. I've been able to like help kid entrepreneurs in other countries. So like, I'm a 3D model. I'm like, cool, here's $1,000. I need these renderings. And it comes back like, oh my God, this dude looks like he's a college senior. This is a 12-year-old. And it's mind-boggling. So the market doesn't value the tools. The market values the thought process. That's why I've been able to stay relevant across 3 generations of design. I started at 19, I'm 41. I done went through 3 waves of design already. I went from hand modeling to 3D modeling to parametric modeling to algorithmic modeling. Like, I've lived through every industrial age to digital age design, and I still get work because my process is applicable to multiple industries. So that's what I would really implore you guys to do. Learn the art of discourse, learn the art of rhetoric, understand the framing of conversations, understand how to negotiate, understand how to communicate, how to present. Those are skills that are highly valuable, that will always be sought after in the design space. Because as much as you're being taught something, we need new people to teach other people new things. So if everybody's talking and nobody's listening, who's actually creating the next? Who's actually listening to where life is headed and then responding with new thoughts? That's what I'm hoping you guys are able to do, is respond with new thoughts, because everything now is a derivative of 3 ideas. Apple aesthetic, you know what I'm saying? Super futurism aesthetic, which is coming out of the fantasy world with all these overbuilt products in Europe. And then you got, this thing being driven through automation, where all the aesthetic looks cold and hard and metallic. It's 3 ideas right now creatively. We need more. So that's what I would say is important.
Yeah, beautiful. And I see a question from Talon in here, and I think this will be the last one as we start to wrap it up. He's asking about kind of launching multiple brands and multiple ideas throughout your career. What's the most important step in kind of launching something new and then being able to take that process? Some of it is storytelling. Nike and like product companies have a big marketing budget and they tell different stories about it, but there's probably some design gems in there as well. So just talk to us about kind of taking multiple ideas or multiple brands and being able to take them from 0 to 1 multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, it really, one is understanding. I think a lot of folks in this design, I would say, generation, have conflated branding with brand. Like, branding is your logos, your colors and fonts, and they'll jump to doing that. Like, I got a brand. That's not a brand, that's branding. That's totally different. Mm-hmm. Your logo means nothing without the story and the structure. And a brand, I can't show that. I was gonna pull something up. See if I could show you guys something real quick. It'll help you understand what I mean. Because a brand house has a mission, a vision, a positioning. It has a structure to it. And you build it in a way that's foundational. Let me see if I have anything. Because I want to show you the brand house. See if I can pull up something. So a brand has a structure to it. At the top is mission, vision. Actually, here, this is a good one to show you. All right. So I can walk you through this. All right, so this essentially is what SuperRug was powered by. We had a multimodal ecosystem of play. And at the core, go right here, hold on. Had to skip over this stuff. Bounce around, find these slides. Yeah, semi trucks, man. We had so much fun stuff going on.
There we go.
Yeah, I'll skip this. All right, so with your brand, right, you'll have your mission, which is what you're trying to do, your vision, which is where you're headed, and your positioning, which is where you are in relation to your competitors in the market. That's your MVP. Once you have your MVP, you need to have your brand pillars. Like, what are you going to do that you're going to be best in class at? That's going to help you establish that relationship. So these are my 3 pillars: experiences, product, and content. At the core of everything we did was physical play. And it was always local and it was digital, meaning I could do it in my front room or I could do it online. And experiences, we knew we needed to have physical play with heroes and guardians. So we segmented our audience to really understand, like, we need to talk to the parent because the parent is going to purchase a product, but we really are inspiring the kid. So I need to inspire the child and the parent as well. So we knew that anything that the parent participated in, it needs to have some nostalgia, which is why we grew up watching Double Dare. So all of my obstacle courses look like Double Dare. So the adult is like, oh man, I remember when I was a kid. And then they like, go do that, little Johnny, go play, little Susie. Like they run and do it because the parent is in love with it because it reminds them of their childhood. The product itself was specifically built for the kid. So we know parents are just gonna look for price and durability, but the kid is gonna feel every stitch, every detail. They're gonna, oh, I can feel it, take the shirt off, I don't like this. And they're gonna fidget and they're gonna wanna take the shoes off in the back of the car. So we needed to build product that was specific to how the kid moved and how the kid played so it looked different. And then the content reinforced the message of the mission. That was the beautiful part. The content reinforced the mission, which gave the parents something to share with other parents when they were explaining our company, which then got other parents to bring their kids into the ecosystem. And you see how each thing is feeding them to stay compelled. If we don't have a new product, we got new content. We don't got new content, we got an experience. We don't got an experience, we at least got stuff you can do online digitally to keep you engaged. So you really have to first establish what new behaviors are you trying to teach this audience? Because all new brands are doing is introducing a new behavior. Nike wants you to just do it. Under Armour wants you to protect his house. Adidas, we are going to get them on code. So that's what we're doing right now. They don't have a purpose. And so you really have to establish what's the new behavior and then what's the indicators that you can measure to say that that behavior is taking root and that can be repeatable within your community. And then that's your brand. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Your branding is what people wear when they want to represent you in a room. Those are the two ways that I can describe them in the simplest way. So you got your personal brand too. And don't forget about that because people want to buy from people, not companies. So you are the greatest asset to your company. You're the secret sauce. You can't be afraid to put yourself out there. You cannot be afraid to be authentic because that's what people are paying for. Someone they can look at and say, man, I trust that person. That guy, Jason, yeah, I trust him to recommend a book for me to read to my kid. I trust him to recommend what playgrounds they should go to because look at how he lives his life. I trust, this person to sell me this garment. Look at how he or she lives her life. So be authentic, be real. Don't pretend to be someone you're not because you will get caught up and you'll get caught out there. Authenticity always wins with brand building.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's something I always appreciate too. You'll always see Jason kind of representing his family, representing Chicago, never code switching, having to shift into or out of. He will literally tell you how it is. And, he's world-class at what he does and his work speaks for itself. So I know we're close to the end of our time here. So I just want to, on behalf of our class and the community, use your favorite reaction in there to say thanks to Jason for coming through, man. I would love to get a selfie. So for however many of y'all that are comfortable coming on video, I'll give a couple seconds for people to come through here and then I'll take a screenshot and send it out later. But Jason, we so appreciate you coming through and blessing us. There's so much that we have to review after the recording is done. So giving us a lot of food for thought. We appreciate you, man. All right, so I think we got a bunch of videos here. So let's do the quick countdown. And 5, and 4, and 3, and 2, and then 1. Here we go. All right, I got it. Well, perfect. This has been another community conversation. Jason Mayden gave us so much. And on behalf of the community, on behalf of the students in the class, on behalf of my co-instructor, Bert, I just want to say thank you. We'll send out the recording and place it on the Siebel Center for Design a YouTube playlist for you to check out or share with, friends and family. But we're wishing you and your families and your friends a great rest of the week. And from us, me and Jay in California, we're trying to send all y'all Chicagoans and Illinoisans some warm weather, right, Jay? Cool. Well, we will close it down here, but everybody have a great rest of the week and weekend, and we'll see you back this time next week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Jason.